My best friend betrayed Maine by trying to steal my girlfriend. But I got the ultimate revenge and ended up finding true love in the end. Growing up, Alex and I were inseparable. We met in elementary school when we both reached for the same comic book in the library. Our shared love of superheroes, video games, and mischief forged a friendship that only deepened with time. Through every school project, heartbreak, and late-night adventure, Alex was there for me, and I for him. We were more like brothers than friends, and I never thought anything could come between us. By the time we reached college, our bond was stronger than ever. We roomed together, shared laughs over the silliest things, and backed each other up whenever life threw curveballs. When I met Sophie during my sophomore year, Alex was the first person I introduced her to. She was everything I had ever dreamed of: smart, funny, and stunningly beautiful. I was smitten, and Alex seemed genuinely happy for me. But as the weeks turned into months, I began to notice subtle changes. Alex's compliments about Sophie started to feel off. What started as casual remarks about her sense of humor or taste in music turned into a constant stream of glowing praises. I chalked it up to Alex being supportive and ignored the gnawing feeling in my gut. Sophie and I had been together for nearly a year when the first cracks in my friendship with Alex began to show. He started showing up uninvited during our date nights. At first I didn't mind. Alex was my best friend and Sophie enjoyed his company too. But as time went on, his presence began to feel intrusive. One evening, as Sophie and I were watching a movie at my apartment, Alex walked in with a bottle of wine, acting as if he belonged there. He plopped himself down between us, jokingly declaring himself the third wheel. Sophie laughed it off, but I couldn't help but feel irritated. I tried to talk to Alex about boundaries, but he brushed it off, saying he was just joking. The red flags became harder to ignore when Sophie started mentioning how often Alex texted her. He's just being friendly, she assured me. But the frequency of their exchanges and the topics inside jokes I wasn't a part of left me uneasy. I wanted to trust Alex, but something about his behavior felt off. The final straw came on Sophie's birthday. I had planned an elaborate surprise party for her, inviting all her friends and organizing every detail down to the type of cake she loved. Alex offered to help, which I appreciated. But during the party I noticed something unsettling. Alex spent most of the evening by Sophie's side, laughing and whispering in her ear. At one point I saw him brush a strand of hair from her face, a gesture far too intimate for my liking. My stomach churned as Sophie smiled at him, seemingly oblivious to my growing discomfort. Later that night, as I was cleaning up, one of Sophie's friends pulled me aside. "I don't want to stir trouble," she said hesitantly, "but I think you should know Alex has been flirting with Sophie. I've seen the texts." My heart sank. I confronted Sophie, who admitted Alex had been overly attentive but insisted she had never reciprocated. Fueled by a mix of anger and betrayal, I decided to confront Alex. I invited him out for coffee, determined to get to the bottom of his behavior. As we sat across from each other, I laid it all out: his constant texting, his flirtatious gestures, and the whispers behind my back. At first Alex denied everything, claiming I was overreacting. But when I mentioned the text Sophie's friend had seen, his demeanor changed. He shrugged and said, "Look man, I can't help it if Sophie likes me too." His nonchalance was like a punch to the gut. "Likes you too," I repeated, barely able to keep my voice steady. Alex smirked, leaning back in his chair. "She deserves someone who really gets her, not someone who's too busy to see what's right in front of him." That was it. The friendship I had cherished for years crumbled in an instant. After the confrontation, I left the coffee shop with my head spinning. I couldn't believe what Alex had said, and I felt sick to my stomach. This wasn't just a betrayal of friendship, it was a calculated attempt to steal Sophie from me. It was as if all the years we had spent as best friends meant nothing to him. I told Sophie about the conversation, hoping she would understand the depth of Alex's betrayal. She was furious, not at me, but at Alex. I never gave him any reason to think I was interested, she insisted, and I believed her. Still, the damage was done. Alex had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. Cutting ties with Alex wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I blocked him on every platform and made it clear to our mutual friends that I wanted nothing to do with him. The fallout was messy, but I couldn't let someone like Alex remain in my life. Sophie stood by me, and for a while it seemed like we could move past the chaos he had caused. Despite Sophie's reassurances, I couldn't shake the lingering doubts. Alex's betrayal had planted seeds of insecurity in my mind. I found myself second-guessing everything: every text Sophie received, every smile she gave to another guy. It wasn't fair to her, but I couldn't help it. Our relationship, once filled with laughter and trust, began to feel strained. I tried to suppress my fears and focus on the good times. But the shadow of Alex's actions loomed over us. Sophie, for her part, tried to be patient, but I could tell she was getting frustrated with my inability to move on. One night, after a particularly tense argument, Sophie said something that stuck with me. "You're letting Alex win. He's not here, but he's still controlling your life. If you don't let this go, you'll lose me too." Her words hit me like a ton of bricks. I didn't want to lose her, but I also didn't know how to heal. Determined not to let Alex's betrayal ruin everything, I decided to take a step back and focus on myself. I started therapy to work through the trust issues and insecurities that had taken root. Talking to someone who wasn't involved in the situation helped me see things more clearly. I also threw myself into my hobbies, working out, playing guitar, and reconnecting with friends I had drifted away from. Slowly but surely, I began to feel like myself again. Sophie noticed the change, and for a while, it seemed like we were on the right track. But as much as I tried, I couldn't ignore the fact that something had shifted between us. The spark we once had was fading, and neither of us seemed to know how to reignite it. Deep down, I began to wonder if Sophie and I were holding on to something that was already gone. The end of my relationship with Sophie came during a quiet Sunday morning. We were sitting on the couch, sipping coffee and scrolling through our phones, when she turned to me and said, "I think we need to talk." Her tone was calm, but the words that followed hit me like a freight train. She admitted that while she still cared for me, she didn't think we were right for each other anymore. "I've been trying to make this work," she said, "but it feels like we're just going through the motions." I wanted to argue, to convince her that we could fix things. But deep down, I knew she was right. We had both been clinging to a relationship that had lost its foundation. It was a painful realization, but as we sat there, talking through our feelings, I realized that letting go might be the best thing for both of us. The breakup with Sophie was amicable, but it still hurt. I spent the following weeks alternating between sadness and relief. Losing her felt like losing a piece of myself, but I knew it was the right decision. For the first time in years, I was truly on my own, and it was both terrifying and liberating. In the midst of my heartbreak, I found solace in the support of friends and family. My mom, ever the optimist, reminded me that every ending is a new beginning. My best friend from high school, Jake, reconnected with me and became a much-needed source of positivity. I also began to reflect on my relationships, not just with Sophie, but with Alex and others in my life. I realized that I had a habit of putting people on pedestals, only to be blindsided when they didn't meet my expectations. It was a hard truth to swallow, but it was also the first step toward real growth. Just as I was starting to rebuild my life, Alex tried to worm his way back in. One day I received a message from an unknown number. "Hey man, can we talk? I miss my best friend." It didn't take a genius to figure out who it was. At first I ignored him. But then he started showing up in places I frequented: coffee shops, the gym, even my favorite bar. He wasn't confrontational. Instead, he played the remorseful friend, apologizing profusely and begging for a chance to make things right. I finally agreed to meet him, if only to make him stop. Sitting across from him again brought back a flood of emotions: anger, sadness, and a tinge of nostalgia for the bond we once had. Alex claimed he had made a mistake and regretted everything, but his words felt hollow. I told him I couldn't trust him anymore, and walked away, leaving our friendship in the ashes where it belonged. Around this time, I began frequenting a cozy little bookstore near my apartment. It became my refuge, a place where I could lose myself in stories and forget about my troubles. That's where I first met Lily. She worked at the bookstore, and our first interaction was as ordinary as could be. I asked her for a book recommendation, and she handed me a novel with a smile that lit up the entire room. There was something about her, an easy warmth and quiet confidence, that intrigued me. Over the next few weeks, I found myself visiting the bookstore more often, not just for the books but for the chance to talk to Lily. Our conversations started with literature, but quickly branched into deeper topics: travel, dreams, and the little joys in life. For the first time in months, I felt a genuine connection with someone. Getting to know Lily was like a breath of fresh air. She wasn't flashy or overly dramatic. She was simply herself: authentic, kind, and thoughtful. She had a way of making people feel seen and heard, something I hadn't realized I needed until I met her. We started hanging out outside the bookstore, grabbing coffee or taking walks in the park. I didn't want to rush into anything, still wary of getting hurt again. But Lily's presence felt different. She wasn't trying to impress me or fill a void. She was just there, and that was enough. One evening, as we sat on a park bench watching the sunset, Lily turned to me and said, "You seem like someone who's been through a lot. But you're still standing, and that's something to be proud of." Her words struck a chord. For the first time in a long while, I felt seen not for my struggles but for my resilience. Just as things with Lily were beginning to take shape, Alex made one final attempt to interfere. This time he reached out to Lily directly. Somehow he had pieced together that she and I were spending time together, and he wasted no time in trying to sabotage it. Lily told me about the message she received from Alex. He had painted himself as a misunderstood victim, claiming I had overreacted and destroyed our friendship over nothing. He seemed desperate, Lily said, but something about it felt off, so I wanted to hear your side of the story. I explained everything: Alex's betrayal, the fallout with Sophie, and the damage he had caused. Lily listened quietly, her expression thoughtful. When I finished, she simply said, "Thanks for telling me. I trust you." Her calm, measured response reassured me that Alex's games wouldn't work this time. With Alex finally out of the picture, I focused on building something real with Lily. We didn't rush into a relationship. Instead, we took our time getting to know each other. She was patient with me, understanding that I was still healing from the scars of my past. Lily taught me the importance of communication. Whenever doubts or insecurities crept in, she encouraged me to talk about them rather than bottling them up. Her openness and honesty were a stark contrast to the drama and manipulation I had experienced before. Over time, I found myself opening up in ways I never had with Sophie. Lily didn't just listen, she understood. She didn't try to fix me or change me, she simply stood by me as I worked on becoming the best version of myself. As my relationship with Lily deepened, I found myself reflecting on everything that had happened with Alex and Sophie. What once felt like the end of the world now seemed like a necessary chapter in my story. If Alex hadn't betrayed me, I might never have realized how toxic our friendship had become. If Sophie and I hadn't parted ways, I wouldn't have met Lily. Lily's presence in my life was a reminder that good people still existed. She showed me that relationships didn't have to be complicated or painful, they could be built on trust, respect, and mutual support. I also began to forgive not Alex but myself. I stopped beating myself up for not seeing the signs sooner and started focusing on the lessons I had learned. My past no longer defined me, it simply shaped me into the person I was becoming. Life with Lily was a revelation. She had this way of making the ordinary extraordinary, whether it was a lazy Sunday morning spent making pancakes or a spontaneous road trip to nowhere in particular. For the first time in a long while, I felt like I was truly living, not just going through the motions. As our relationship grew, so did my understanding of what I wanted in life. Lily didn't complete me, she complemented me. She wasn't a crutch to lean on or a distraction from my pain, she was a partner. Someone who walked beside me as I figured things out. My friends and family noticed the change in me. "You're like a new person," Jake said one night over drinks. "Happier. More confident," I nodded, realizing he was right. Lily hadn't just helped me move on from the past, she had inspired me to embrace the future. Despite cutting Alex out of my life, I occasionally heard about him through mutual friends. It seemed his manipulative ways had finally caught up with him. Word spread that he had tried to pull the same stunts with other people, and his once wide social circle had shrunk to almost nothing. One day I ran into him at a local coffee shop. He looked different, tired, disheveled, and visibly uncomfortable when he saw me. "Hey," he muttered, avoiding eye contact. I nodded in acknowledgement, but didn't stop to chat. Whatever lingering anger I felt toward him had faded into indifference. Later I realized this was the ultimate revenge, not some grand act of retribution, but living well and thriving while he was left to deal with the consequences of his actions. I didn't need to confront him or rub my happiness in his face. My life had moved on. And that was enough. Lily and I decided to take the next step in our relationship by moving in together. It wasn't a rushed decision, we had spent months talking about it, making sure we were both ready. When the day finally came, it felt like a natural progression, not a leap of faith. Living with Lily was a joy. We found a rhythm that worked for us, sharing chores, cooking meals together, and carving out time for our individual interests. She introduced me to yoga, and I got her hooked on retro video games. Our differences didn't drive us apart, they brought us closer. It was during one of our late-night talks that Lily shared a dream of hers opening her own bookstore cafe. Her passion was contagious, and I found myself wanting to help her achieve it. We began sketching out ideas and saving money, turning her dream into a shared goal. Every now and then the past would creep back into my mind. I'd think about Sophie and wonder how she was doing. I wasn't bitter anymore, time had softened the edges of those memories. I even thought about reaching out to apologize for the ways I had let my insecurities affect our relationship, but I decided against it. The bigger challenge was forgiving Alex. Therapy had taught me that forgiveness wasn't about excusing his actions, it was about freeing myself from the weight of resentment. Slowly, I let go of the anger I had held onto for so long. I didn't forgive him for his sake, I did it for mine. With each passing day, the hold the past had on me grew weaker. Lily's unwavering support and my own personal growth had given me the strength to let go and move forward. The wounds were still there, but they had healed into scars, reminders of where I had been and how far I had come. Lily's bookstore cafe became a reality after months of planning, saving, and hard work. We poured our hearts into the project, turning a small corner shop into a cozy haven for book lovers and coffee enthusiasts alike. Opening day was a whirlwind of emotions. Watching Lily interact with customers, her face lighting up with every smile and thank you, filled me with pride. She had turned her dream into reality, and I was honored to have played a part in it. The cafe became more than just a business, it became a reflection of our journey together. Every book on the shelves, every detail in the decor, and every cup of coffee served was a testament to what we had built, not just as individuals, but as a team. One afternoon, while working at the cafe, I saw a familiar face walk through the door. It was Sophie. She looked surprised to see me but smiled warmly. "Hey," she said, her voice carrying a mix of nostalgia and curiosity. We talked briefly, catching up on each other's lives. She was doing well, traveling, pursuing her passions, and living her best life. There was no awkwardness, no lingering tension, just two people who had once shared something and were now on separate paths. As Sophie left, I felt a sense of closure I hadn't realized I needed. Seeing her happy and thriving reassured me that letting go of our relationship had been the right choice. It wasn't a sad moment, it was a peaceful one. Lily and I celebrated our first anniversary with a quiet dinner at home. As we sat together, reminiscing about the past year, I realized just how much my life had changed. I had gone from feeling broken and betrayed to finding love, purpose, and peace. The bookstore cafe continued to thrive, and Lily's dream had become a cornerstone of our community. People came not just for the books and coffee but for the atmosphere she had created, a space filled with warmth, laughter, and connection. Our relationship deepened with each passing day. Lily wasn't just my partner, she was my best friend, my confidant, and the person who made me believe in love again. I knew I wanted to spend the rest of my life with Lily, but I wanted the proposal to be special. After weeks of planning, I decided to propose at the bookstore cafe, the place that symbolized so much of our journey. One evening, after closing time, I led Lily to a cozy corner of the cafe. The shelves were lined with fairy lights and a table was set with her favorite flowers and a handwritten note. As she read the note, I got down on one knee and asked her to marry me. Tears filled her eyes as she nodded, whispering, yes. It was a moment of pure joy. The culmination of everything we had been through and everything we had built together. Our wedding was a small, intimate affair surrounded by the people who mattered most. Jake served as my best man, and Lily's sister walked her down the aisle. The ceremony was held in a garden, with soft music and twinkling lights creating a magical atmosphere. As I watched Lily walk toward me, I felt a wave of gratitude. She had brought light into my life when I needed it most, and now we were starting a new chapter together. When we exchanged vows, there wasn't a dry eye in the audience. The reception was filled with laughter, dancing, and heartfelt speeches. It wasn't extravagant, but it was perfect, a celebration of love, resilience, and new beginnings. Life after the wedding was everything I had hoped for and more. Lily and I continued to grow together, building a life filled with love, laughter, and shared dreams. The bookstore cafe flourished, becoming a beloved part of the community, and we even began talking about starting a family. Looking back, I realized that every twist and turn had led me to this point. Alex's betrayal, Sophie's departure, and the struggles I faced were all stepping stones on the path to finding true happiness. Lily wasn't just my happily ever after, she was my reminder that even in the darkest moments, there's always a chance for a fresh start. And for that, I would be forever grateful.